So what's the secret of the Italian ship disaster and all those that died? Well, it's really not a secret at all, but nowhere in the dinosaur corporate horror media have I seen really people discuss the fact that in case after case, over and over again, in major disasters where big institutions, big corporations, or big governments are involved, does the system actually take care of the little people? And that's because big institutions are always filled with bureaucracy. And bureaucracies always seek to basically limit liability. And so the individuals involved are all denying responsibility. And so when you actually have a big crisis take place, well, everybody's there passing the buck. And you see this in modern society. You see this in large urban centers in China, in the United States, and Europe, where there'll be a woman who's been stabbed laying in the middle of the road for 2 hours as hundreds of cars and pedestrians go by. I mean, the cases are legion. And it's the same thing here. This captain first tried to blame the charts and the GPS, but he was clearly going right by the side of the island. Then once the ship struck the rocks, the captain was basically telling the crew everything was fine, telling the people, don't worry, we've just lost some power, some generators. This went on for hour after hour after hour as the ship even began to list and lean. And, of course, the people that got off and actually survived were the guests on the ship, the passengers who didn't buy into this. Now, it turns out what was happening is the captain and the crew, which was around 20% of the total 4,000 plus that were on board, were basically getting off themselves first. And when you have an immoral society, when you have a society where it's every man for himself, you're going to see this happen. I mean, the Titanic was a big disaster and a giant fiasco, but the captain did go down with the ship. Many of the top officers went down because that was the honorable thing to do. Now, of course, the rich people in first class basically had the doors locked and left the poor people in steerage to die to make sure that they got life rafts. And when you saw the rich, basically demand that they be let on the lifeboats first, you really see a parable or a parallel to everything that we face today. The globalists think that the world belongs to them, and they're always going to try to protect themselves from any type of risk. And they're going to do that at the expense of the general public. The secret of this disaster is you're never 100% safe. No one can protect you better than yourself. And government and big institutions can't and won't protect you. When you count on someone else for your welfare, for your security, for your future, when you hand over authority for your life, it always results in one thing societally, and that is corruption and tyranny. And the controllers that are providing for the general public and directing the general public basically seeing us as cattle and feeding on us. Government takes taxes from the American people and then claims that they're providing for us. So you see, it's another cruel lie. They take Social Security from the public for decades and then basically steal the money without investing it, and then later hold everyone hostage and say, we've got to raise taxes, our Social Security will go belly up, and then they only steal that new money. But this system that seeks to turn us into creatures that are totally dependent on the system is always at odds and eternally at war with rugged individualism and true independence. And every couple days, I see articles out of Oklahoma, California, Texas, where women are in their home alone and men with guns and knives are busting down their doors, coming in to attack them. And the women call 911 and ask permission to shoot the armed intruders. Just today, I saw an article that was in the Galveston newspaper down in South Texas where a 15-year-old girl got out of the shower. Her parents were gone. There were 2 burglars inside the house. She ran to her dad's desk, got his handgun, went and menaced them with the firearm. And I heard local talk show hosts who were supposedly conservative here in independent Texas saying, should she have had that gun? Should her father have let her have that gun at her fingertips? This idea that she's the criminal. And you look at England where they charge people who defend themselves in home invasions, even with their bare hands. A nanny state does not want you to defend yourself. They do not want you to even know that you legally have a right and a duty to do that. They want you to think that it's the state that has to protect you. And as the state takes over the role of protector, like in Chicago and New York, the crime rates only explode. And then what does the system do? They come out and say the answer is more police, more surveillance, more control. The bigger the drug war gets, the more drugs are shipped in because the price is higher. The more checkpoints, the more home invasions, the more warrantless searches you supposedly have to go through. This is how the tyrants convert our society into an oppressive system. And the hallmark of an oppressive, despotic tyranny is that it always seeks to disarm the population and to punish those that seek to defend themselves. You know, I'm an 8th generation Texan. My children are 9th generation. We were Texans before it was even Mexico, back when it was Spain. And growing up as a very young age, I was taught to use firearms. And I was taught to use a firearm if anybody ever tried to assault me. And it's so alien to someone like myself that was brought up with basic freedom to see domesticated populations on the news and calling into talk radio saying that the young girl should have just begged the robbers to not rape her instead of actually chasing them out of the house. It just shows how those of us that love freedom truly are from a completely different dimension from those that love servitude and the nanny state. Now, I've got a few examples of this here. Oklahoma teen mom asks 9/11 for permission, fatally shoots intruder on New Year's Eve. And here's the 15-year-old girl is safe after police say she turned a gun on 2 men who broke into her home, according to the Galveston Daily News. But let me show you what the nanny state is doing in the U.S., England, and Canada. Here is an unbelievable article. Homeowner fined $5,200 for growing cucumbers, plans lawsuit. That's right, I saw one of the city council members in Tulsa, Oklahoma a few years ago come out and say, we need inspections of backyard gardens because you might be growing marijuana. The idea that growing things on your own property, that you're guilty until proven innocent, that there's a pre-crime there. But reading this article, they fly over in Canada, the U.S., and England with helicopters. And if they see a heat residence, they use that without a warrant in many cases to break into your house. In England, in one case, it was a guinea pig heater. My son has a lizard and has a little heat lamp, and I'm told that'll get you a good SWAT team raid. But it gets worse. All over the Western world, police analyze your power consumption. I was talking to an Austin cop more than a decade ago, and he said, yeah, one time we broke in without a warrant during the day to this 90-something-year-old retired UT fish scientist. I forget the technical name. And she had all these fish tanks in her house, and it was using more power than, quote, one woman should, according to the census in her house. So we broke in and saw that it was fish tanks and just left. Well, right here in this article out of Canada, it says you can be fined more than $10,000 for growing vegetables in your house. And do you know why? Because it might be drugs sometime. And you know why they fine you tens of thousands of dollars or more for simply growing vegetables on your own house? Well, because it's not out in plain view. And that just can't be trusted, kind of like the woman with the garden up in Michigan who had to be criminally charged. Like the Amish who were being SWAT teamed, or people selling pumpkins being arrested, or people selling lemonade. Under Stalin, in Russia and Ukraine, they went after the small farmers. They shut them down. Mao Zedong did it. The enemy of the nanny state is anybody that's self-sufficient or even quasi-self-sufficient. They want you in this plastic, artificial system totally under their control. They need you only going to the big box stores, like Louisiana passing a law that you can't take cash unless you're a box store. It's off the charts what we've turned into, and it's only getting worse by the minute. This article continues. What's worse, inspectors don't even have to find any marijuana. If they find what they deem residual evidence, such as high mold readings, they can charge homeowners search fees. So it's kind of like Brazil, the dystopic remake of 1984 by Terry Gilliam, where when they come and arrest your husband with a black bag and he disappears forever, they charge you for it. And so it goes on, though, that if you refuse to have home inspectors in your home to see if you're growing any vegetables, that you're then have your home condemned and taken from you. So they come to your house without warrants all over Canada, and this is now starting in the U.S., and they say, we want to come in without warrants. And if you say no, they just condemn your house and then take it outright. $1,000 fines for 3-inch grass. It's happening all over the U.S. It is tyranny on steroids. And lastly, here's the nanny state right here. After the feds take over your state, give it all these unfunded mandates that you can never fund, and take whatever money you do raise and pay it in banker bailouts, tens of trillions, to offshore corporations. After all of this has happened, the Associated Press reports Central Falls, Rhode Island, a once prosperous city, is now bankrupt following state and federal mandates, and will now no longer have a right to vote, and will be corporately owned, and will be run by a corporate administrator who will raise any fines or fees they wish on the public, and there's no law. Total corporate fascism right here. And if you think I'm joking, when the state stepped in to take over the financially struggling Central Falls in 2010, Rhode Island's smallest city lost something fundamental. Its democratic government. The mayor would be forced to give back the key to the city hall. And the city council was relegated to advisory status, unsure for months whether it was even allowed to convene. That's what the whole Congress is now, is just ceremonial. The article goes on. They're being governed without elected representation, said Senator Elizabeth Crowley, said of Central Falls, 19,000 residents. And it goes on from there. Our highways are being seized by mega corporations that are already paid for by citizens. Our whole infrastructure is being taken over. We've got reports pouring in where they're now forcibly inoculating children in California and other states without parental consent. The government can't and won't protect you. It is nothing but a dangerous criminal organization now bought and paid for by offshore corporations that are looting and subdividing and usurping our society. Prepare yourselves. Engage in radical evil. Plant gardens. Own firearms. Don't eat GMO. Eat healthy food. Spend time with your family. Don't watch as much television. Read the Bill of Rights and Constitution. I know that sounded like a joke saying that's radical, but actually that's listed as terrorism in the different MIAC and Homeland Security documents, because the criminals have now declared good, wholesome behavior as evil. America's in a lot of trouble, but it's always darkest before the dawn, and the public is now really ready to be awakened. So please get this message out to everybody you know. The nanny state isn't here to protect you. It's here to rob the living daylights out of you. And the nanny state crooks and their corporate controllers now know that you're awake. So they're pulling out all the stops and trying to get their system in place before the sleeping giant that is America fully awakens. This contest is for all the marbles. It's up to you who wins. These chicken neck criminal control freaks or humanity. I know you're going to wake up and we're going to kick their butt together.